Alright, so now we've downloaded web content, the next step is to see how we can use similar code to download an image and then display that for the user. We'll then be in a perfect position to play our Guess the Celebrity app in the next video. So, quick challenge for you then, could you create a new app and then create a button and an image within that app and set up the button so that when you tap it, something is sent to the logs. So we just need a button and an image and then make the button interactive and send something to the logs when it's tapped. Good luck. Alright, that should have been a fairly straightforward challenge. So create a new project. I'll call it downloading images. All the usual settings. Next, next, and finish. Here we go. So I'm going to get rid of that label and then drag in a button, top left, and I'm going to make it nice and big. So we'll change the width to match the parent. And then I'm going to drag in an image view, which I want to take up the rest of the screen. So fill parent width and fill parent height. There we go. The button, if it wasn't obvious last time, is going to be used to download the image. So I'll just change the text there. Don't worry if you didn't do that bit. And then I'm going to change the onClick method to download image. And finally, I just need to write the code for the download image method. So usual public void download image. And remember it's being called by a view, which we'll call view. Add that package and then we're just going to log some interaction, specifically the button has been tapped. There we go. That should do it. If you couldn't remember how to do that, then shame on you, but hopefully you did. I'm going to use the same emulator I was using before. And let's just take a look and make sure we've got that little bit of interaction. Okay, so the app looks good. Tap download image. There we go, button tapped. Fantastic. So I always like to set that up first before I try and do anything with my buttons, just to make sure that everything's connected and working fine. Of course, to download our image, we're going to need an image to download. And I'm going to use one of my favorite cartoon characters, Bart Simpson, and I'm just going to put wiki in there so that with any luck we'll get the one from Wikipedia, which generally speaking is easy to use. And I'm just going to copy the, not the link address, sorry, the image URL, and then paste that back in here. So we're going to call it in the download image method here. So I'll just comment in the URL that we're going to download the image from. While we're here, we'll just connect up the image view. And I'm going to leave the ID as image view there. And in the onCreate method, we'll just find that. And that's going to be an image view. And I'll call it downloaded image. And it's going to be an image view, of course, cast to image view, and we get it using find view by ID, resources.id.image view. There we go. All right. Let's now create our class to extend async task and download our image. So as before, public class, I'll call it image downloader this time. And of course it extends async task, and we're going to send it a string. We're not going to call a method while it's running, but this time we're going to return the image itself. So that's going to be a bitmap rather than the content of a website, which was the string last time round. Okay, let's then click on the red light bulb and implement the do in background method. That just saves us having to type it out ourselves. So you can see it knows that we want to return a bitmap this time. But just as before, let's change the vararg to be called URLs. And now let's write our code to download this image. Now you could try attempting doing some of this yourself because a lot of the code is the same as before, but if you want to follow along, that's absolutely fine. So first off, we're going to create a URL, call it URL, and we're going to create it as a new URL from URLs 0. So that is creating it from the URL that we passed to this method. And again, you can see we've got the error there, which tells us to surround it with try and catch, because that might fail if we've got a malformed URL. So it's even given us the likely exception that might happen there. But it shouldn't do because we're going to specify what the URL is. Now let's create our new URL connection. So HTTP URL connection. Call it connection this time. And it's going to be an HTTP URL connection. And we're going to create it from our URL dot open connection. Now you can see we've got another red underline there. That's because this is going to cause a different sort of exception, so we can actually add a new exception. So this is an IO exception, which is input-output exception. So it will likely occur if we haven't asked permission, for example, to use the internet, or if the user doesn't have their internet switched on. Now, here's where things change slightly from what we did before. Before we went through all of the characters that were being returned one by one and put them all together. Because we're downloading an image this time, we can't do that in quite the same way because an image isn't made up of a bunch of characters. So essentially what we do is download the image in one go and then convert the data that we get to a bitmap image, which finally we're going to be able to set to our downloaded image view. So to do that, we use connection.connect to connect to our connection, and then we create an input stream similar to what we did before. I'm going to call it IS, or let's call it input stream. I guess that's a bit clearer. Input stream, and that's going to be connection.get input stream. So that then downloads the whole input stream in one go. And finally, we want to convert that to a bitmap. So we use bitmap to create a bitmap. I'm going to call it my bitmap. And then we use what's called bitmap factory, which is just a bunch of commands that we can use to manipulate and encode or decode images. Dot decode stream, and then the stream that we want to decode is the input stream. So that just converts this data that's been downloaded into an image that we can then work with, and then we can return my bitmap. So those lines of code then download the image, convert it to a bitmap that we can then return to the original calling method, which is going to be up here. And we call that in much the same way that we did before. So we're going to create a new image downloader. And we'll call it task again, because once again it is a task that we're using async task for. And that's going to be a new image downloader. And we'll create a bitmap. I'll call it my image. And then we'll set my image to task.execute, and we need to pass to that the string that we want to execute, and then .get to get the result. So just the same as before, but this time we're working with a bitmap rather than a string. That's going to tell us to surround it with try and catch, which I'm very happy to do. And then we'll have all of those. I think actually I'm going to get rid of those and just combine them to a single exception there, because there's a chance that my image doesn't get returned properly as well, and I want to include that in these possibilities of exceptions. Finally then, we need to get the downloaded image view and apply our my image bitmap to that. So I'm just going to change or move the definition to up here so that I can access it from my download image method. And then we'll set it there, and then finally here we'll set downloaded image dot set image bitmap to my image. There we go. One thing, of course, we do need to add the necessary line to our manifest. And you'll remember that that is uses permission, and we want android.permission.internet. There we go. You can see we've got a red wiggly line there. We have got an error, and that's because we won't get anything returned if this fails, and we need to have something returned. So what we'll do is, if we're unsuccessful here in our try to download the image, we'll just return null. And then that won't cause us any problems. It will be nice to display a error message for the user, but that's fairly easy to do. We could just add a toast or something here, so we're not going to spend time doing that now. All right then, let's have a look. Let's run that, and we should then find, if we just quickly run through the code that we've written, when the user taps on our button, the download image method will be called, which will then execute the task of image downloader with that URL. The image downloader task extends async string, which means it happens on the background thread, and that will then convert the URL, if it can, to a valid URL, create an HTTP URL connection, connect to that, create an input stream which gets the content of that URL, convert that to a bitmap, and then return it to the original method that called it, which will then set downloaded image, which is our image view, to have that image. All right, let's give it a try. So here's our download image button. We tap it, and there we go. Downloads the image and displays it there for us. Fantastic. So that's how we download images. We're now going to put all this together in our pretty fun Guess the Celebrity app.